Okay, good morning. My name's Gary Matsuoka, and we're here at Laguna Hills Nursery on a Saturday morning here in Santa Ana, California. And our class today is growing strawberries in local gardens. I mean, I have to reference that because if you're watching from up north or back east, it's a different method. But here in California, we're lucky. We're one of the few places in the world, in in the United States, where the farmers around here plant in the fall, and they've got strawberries they can pick before Christmas. So that's one of the goals we have. Pretty much anywhere else in the United States, strawberries don't ripen until late winter. And in most areas, especially in the northern states, they don't ripen until late spring. So we have the advantage that we can grow strawberries pretty much year round, although, the farmers want. So if you see what they do on farms, like a friend of mine who runs a large farm in Orange County, they usually put their strawberries on this very sandy soil. They seem to like the really good drainage. And generally, when they grow strawberries, they grow them in a double row on a berms. And in that soil I just showed you, these berms are 18 inches high. Now, he runs an organic farm, and if you have an organic strawberry farm, these berms are covered in black plastic. And then the plants are usually installed in holes in the plastic. You'll see the leaves on two sides. And then the berries form. And generally the berries are kind of hanging over the side of the plastic like that. They'll be all over though. And so in California, Southern California especially, can start harvesting by December, if not a little earlier than that. Florida usually kicks in late January. So they're a little behind us because they do get colder weather generally in the winter time than we do here. So Orange County, San Diego County, especially Ventura area, that's your early strawberry production. Now, you'll also notice that some farms have clear plastic on the beds. And the clear plastics warms up the soil better than the black plastic does. But the clear plastic, you have to fumigate the soil. So clear plastic's like putting the plants inside a greenhouse. That lets the energy of the sun right through the plastic, heats up the soil, and the plastic won't let the heat out. So they're baking underneath that thing. So they're nice and warm, and those are the first ones produced. Black plastic takes longer to warm up the soil because the plastic itself is hot, but the energy isn't transferred to the soil too well. But unless you fumigate the soil, I've had customers tell me they tried the clear plastic in their backyard, and all they got was a whole bunch of weeds competing with the strawberry plants. Unless you fumigate the ground, the weed seeds just take over. The weed plants take over, and you can't grow your strawberries underneath there unless you keep pulling the plastic up and pulling the weeds out. So they said, yeah, you have to use for organic farming where they don't fumigate the ground, they have to cover it in black plastic so you don't get any weed growth. So, and the other thing that fumigation allows the farmers to do is they can grow the strawberries in the same soil every year. Whereas the organic farmers, they can only grow strawberries about once every 4 or 5 years in that same soil. So the problem with any plant, any crop you have, is once you grow strawberries for a whole 6 months, 8 months, which is about the time of their crop. It leaves behind a lot of dead strawberry roots. And if you try to plant into that the next year, the plants don't do well because they're just fighting diseases all their life. So now, if you've got them in the ground, they can go for more than 1 year and do pretty well because there's enough dirt there so that they've got. So if you leave them in the ground, they can find the root, they grow longer roots and kind of get out of that area where they put their dead roots. And strawberry plants generally can live 3 years decently. But what we're finding, especially if you put them in containers, is that the second year is only half as good as the first. But generally, so in Orange County, they usually start a new crop every year, and there's more than one reason for that. But if you go up to Monterey or Oregon or Washington along the coastline, they'll leave them in the ground for 3 to 4 years. And because it's, of course, it's a lot less expensive not to have to start over. But the other reason why Orange County, they start them every year is because if you are in a colder, well, okay, so if you leave them in the ground, like if this is a plant from last year, you can see it's not blooming right now and it's not making berries. Here's a plant that was brought down from the Propagating nursery in Northern California. It's flowering. And there's a couple reasons for that. This plant was grown most likely at Lassen Canyon Nursery in the Sierra foothills, and it's already cold up there. So this has got its winter chill. Plus, when they're shipping the strawberry plants in large bags, they refrigerate them. So here we have, so the strawberries are grown on a farm in sandy soil in Northern California, and they're shipped in boxes and plastic bags in the refrigerator. So they get an additional cold. So all strawberries need a period of chill, just like a lot of other plants from temperate climates, in order to start their spring bloom. So these plants here, which were bare root, this is probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago, are now blooming and ready, and they're making their spring crop. It's warm here. They've already had their winter, whereas if you have a plant from last year, it hasn't had its winter yet. Now, Sunset Magazine did a little article where they said, well, you can take your plants out of the ground and throw them in the refrigerator for several weeks, and then they get their chill, and then you put them back in the ground, and they'll start fruiting right away. Well, these things are $1. So it's just easier to buy them already pre-chilled, ready to go, put them in brand new soil, and you'll have strawberries. Like this probably won't start making strawberries till March, or, well, it'll probably start ripening strawberries around March, April, or May. Whereas these, again, that it's already got one ripe berry on it. So it's raring to go. Now, what they do recommend for farms and for homeowners both is that when these things start growing, now here's one I just planted a week ago from those bare roots, and you can see it's starting to grow leaves. But what it will do is send out a flower right away. So what they do say, and what all the farmers do too, is they walk the fields when they're starting to grow like this, and the first set of blooms that come up, they break them off because the leaves aren't well developed yet. And if you don't have well developed leaves, you'll get a berry like this one that's only, about 3/4 of an inch, because those leaves aren't big enough or mature enough yet. The plant's not mature enough yet. So they break off the first set of flowers that the plant makes. But after that, they leave them and they can get their berries. So on a mature plant, what you'll notice is that the leaves are about twice this size. So each leaflet, it's got 3 leaflets on this leaf. Each leaflet's like that. They're big. They're pretty good size. So they, depending on the farm they are, if it's clear plastic, they use fumigation. Now, another reason they fumigate is so they can plant in the same soil every year, because fumigation kills the diseases that are building up because of the dead strawberries from the previous year. Well, if you fumigate the ground, it essentially sterilizes it. If you're an organic farmer, you don't plant in the same soil for 4 or 5 years. Now, again, you can leave the same plant. If you pull the plant out, of course, the ground's full of dead roots. If you leave the same plant there in the ground, then it can produce for several more years. But again, best quality fruit, best quality plants is if you plant in a new spot in your garden every year, or new soil in your garden every year. Now, the best soil to plant them in pots, most potting soils don't do a very good job with strawberries. So when we started testing soil, 1993, I think, is the year we first started testing soils, because at that time we knew about the problems we had with potting soils and water, the plants rotting in potting soil. So we did our testing in pots that were maybe this size, and we put pure sand in one. We put Whitney Farms. Now, at that time, the top of the line potting soil was Whitney Farms' Uncle Malcolm's brand. So you put one in that. And what happened was, in the Uncle Malcolm's Whitney Farms potting soil, which was the brand we were selling, the plants, well, they were smaller than these. They were about 8 inches across with berries about that big. And in pure sand, the same plant was like 2 foot across. Leaflets that big, much bigger strawberries. And that was the first experiment we did. And we said, okay, we can't sell commercial potting soils anymore because of what we were seeing. That strawberries were a good test plant to tell you how good your soil is. Pure sand was the original potting soil from hundreds of years ago. And it still apparently is the best, except for the weight of it. Of course, you have to fertilize. Potting soils you have to fertilize too. But we couldn't sell the commercial brands of potting soil more, so that's when we started making our own. The first soil we came up with was our acid mix potting soil, and that's what most people grow strawberries in to this day. So it's lighter than sand, but it acts like sand. It doesn't have any recently dead stuff in it. That most potting soils are just dead trees ground up, half rotten, and you're expected to grow plants in it. They don't really like it. This is peat moss and volcanic rock, neither of which really decomposes much. Peat moss does decompose, but it's really slow because it's really old. It's been sitting at the bottom of the lake for decades, if not centuries, and it doesn't decompose very fast, whereas ground up trees, bark, and wood decompose relatively quickly, and they cause trouble to the plants growing them. They may not kill them, but it certainly stunts their growth. So the type of soil you use is quite important. So you can grow them in the ground. One of the problems we do have with strawberries in the ground is predation. So one of the, of course, birds are there you know, if people grow strawberries around, the birds just hack at them, the pill bugs get them, the snails get them. There's a lot of things that eat strawberries in the ground. So a lot of our customers now grow strawberries in pots. Now, this is a strawberry pot, which with conventional potting soil actually can work because the plants only get this big. But if you put better potting soil in here, one strawberry plant's like this, there's just no way there's room to put, what is that, about a dozen strawberry plants that close together. So this is kind of, you know, it may be better just to put herbs in here, something you don't need much of. But for a strawberry plant, you can put one on the top, but there's just not enough room to put strawberry plants 3 or 4 inches apart on the sides. They've got to be a good 6 inches to a foot. You know, on farms, they plant them 18 inches apart because they are going to grow 2 feet. And there's just no way you can put a 2-foot wide plant in each of these little side pockets. So that's stunted. Now, this is not too bad. A window box planter, because you can line up about 4 to 5 plants in here and have pretty decent room because they can spread out sideways nicely. Now what we find is, the reason why we like pots a lot is because when the berries are hanging off the sides, the birds just can't get them. They just can't peck the berries that are hanging like that. And generally pill bugs can't climb up to get them and snails don't see them. So we have a lot better luck in that. Now what I did in my yard once when my kids were still at home, you know, we didn't really know at that time how big a pot strawberries needed, but we knew it was bigger than a 1-gallon container. This is 8-inch wide, which is fairly close to 1.5 gallons or so. And one of the other problems is they use a lot of water. So what I did to stop the snails and keep them wetter, so we kept these saucers underneath the pots filled with water. Well, we fill them up with water once a week. And the plant would use the water within about 5 or 6 days and last and make it through the week. But this kept the bugs off of them. The little motor around here, I actually had a little bit bigger saucer. And I only had to water them once a week. And each plant, which was about this big, was making 2 to 3 berries per week in the spring at maximum production. And for a family of 4, 10 of these, which was 20 to 30 berries at max production per week, was decent. That was pretty decent. So nowadays I would tell you this size container is better. And strawberry plants are probably even better in a deeper pot than this. So they do like good drainage. I mean, in this soil, this real nice sandy soil in Irvine, where a friend of mine farms, they raise these things 18 inches. Now, in the Monterey area, near the coast, they've got a lot of clay. But they still can grow strawberries in it. So when you raise soil up, the drainage improves. So in Monterey, 30 inches, or I think it's actually 36. They raise the beds 36 inches. They got to cover them with plastic so they don't wash away. But some of the farms up there have videos, you can see on the internet, and you see the kids running through the fields. All you see is their head, because they raise their strawberry beds, the clay soil, 36 inches to get the same results as a sandier soil that's raised 18 inches. Of course, the other reason they raise is so you don't have to crawl on the ground to pick your berries. If they're 18 inches, that's knee height. So that's not bad. If you're not too tall, you can just pick the berries that way. 36, that's pretty nice. They're at this height. So now they like plenty of water, plenty of fertilizer. The general organic fertilizers are fine. We've done quite well with in containers, especially with the time release like Osmocote. But a general purpose fertilizer. They don't have real specific requirements on fertilizer that we've heard of anyway. We haven't seen. Now, pest-wise, there is one nasty one that, and I forgot to bring the product up here, but there's two bugs now that are causing trouble. One is spider mites. Let me bring the products up here so I have them to show you. Fortunately, the products are considered for use on, are fine for use on organic farms. So for spider mites, the oil sprays, there's neem oil, that's an organic source. This is a mineral oil, which is a synthetic source, but because oils just evaporate and are gone, they say they're fine for organic use. And spider mites can get underneath the leaves and just make the leaves very non-productive. They suck on the leaves and slowly wipe out the plant. So at the organic farm that a friend of mine runs, they have this real old tractor with these booms on them, and it's their oil spraying tractor. So that's one of the things they always have to do is go through their farm now and then, especially during spring and summer, early summer, and spray for spider mites. They make the leaves have little white dots all over them. The leaves slowly turn kind of grayish with brown edges, and that really knocks down the production of the plants. So spider mites are important to control. And we're also seeing thrips now. It could be the chili thrip that's doing it. There's a lot of new thrips out there. And what they do is they attack the berries, especially in the summer months. So the berry itself, instead of being red, is shriveled because these spider mites, the thrips, excuse me, are poking holes in the skin of the fruit. And they're kind of orangey, browny, shriveled up little berries. Right now, still the best thing on thrips is spinosad. So for spider mites, it's oil, thrips, spinosad, which is an organic, considered organic material. It's a chemical that was found in a rum distillery in the Caribbean that's produced by bacteria in the fermentation process. So they consider it safe for people because people have drank it for generations, apparently. And it does kill thrips quite well. Oil kills thrips a little bit, so it's nice to go back and forth once you start seeing any problems. We didn't see any problems much this year because it was a cool year. We had a lot of problems 2 years ago when it was a hot summer. So thrips are more problematic during warmer summers. I mean, we're due for a warm summer again soon, but the last 2 summers have been on the cool side. Okay, so that's the bugs. Now, so generally keep it moist at all times. Now, strawberry plants in general produce heaviest from, say, late winter, especially if you get new ones every year, late winter through all the way through spring. And as we get to midsummer, they all start producing less berries. Now, there's two kinds. Well, okay, I should mention this too. So in my yard, one of the ways we didn't have a lot of window boxes in our yard, but we had a lot of pots. So the other way we did the strawberries, we stacked up pots just like this. These are the three sizes we used. We put containers inside to take up some of the space, but that's exactly how we stack them, so that we put about 6 or 8 strawberries there, 5 or 6 here, and 3 there on top. And most of the berries are hanging over the sides, and nothing touches those berries either. Full day of sun is best. We've grown them in about 2/3 a day of sun. They're still okay. Now, we kept this thing going for several years, but what we would do is every now and then we'd pull out a strawberry plant, put new soil in that area, and put the strawberry back in. So you kind of do that, put new soil in when you put new strawberry plants in that. Now, on the history of strawberries, strawberries are native throughout the northern hemisphere and all along the North and South American west coast. So that's where the original strawberries were found. In Europe, we have the woodland strawberries, which are this is a woodland strawberry, and they tend to make berries about the size of your pinky nail, but they're super flavorful. So this is a woodland. I don't have any of these for sale this time of year. This is kind of a remnant. We sell these more late spring through summer. And they make berries about the size of your pinky nail to maybe the size of your index fingernail. So they're small berries, but they're packed and they got the flavor. They got lots of sweetness and a lot of acidity, which makes them really flavorful. So that's what they're known for, but they don't have the size. So what they did is they started breeding strawberries from the New World. One's from the East Coast United States, this is Fragaria vesca. And then the ones from the East Coast United States, Fragaria virginiensis. And then the ones from the West Coast of North America, which are called Fragaria chiloensis, native all the way down from Chile to Canada on the West Coast. They're native, in the sandy areas of California too, along the coast and along the rivers. So that's so virginiensis. I don't exactly know how to spell that word. And then chiloensis, where the 3 species people in Europe and North America started breeding together. This one has a size. So the West Coast strawberries have the size. I think the virginiensis gave them more production, and then the European or alpine strawberries, woodland strawberries, gave them the flavor. And that's your modern strawberry, is a combination of those. So we started, I don't know, the first strawberries I remember when I came to work at my dad's place, the number 1 strawberry at that time was Sequoia. And we still sell it. It's still, University of California created this I think in the late 70s, and it was the first quote of the modern strawberries. Size, flavor, aroma, color, everything about it is still excellent. Now, the reason they don't use this commercially anymore is because it didn't have good hang time. So you go out there and you pick it that day it's ripe. If you wait 2 more days, it's mush. So it's not a good shipping strawberry. So Sequoia was the first one out. It's still an excellent one to grow. Soon after that, it was Douglas and Chandler. So these were the strawberries we sold. And we still do Chandler. Sequoia and Chandler are still around. So Chandler was the best strawberry we had because it was a little firmer than Sequoia and had a little better hang time. 1980s. Throughout the 80s, this was like the best strawberry we had. And then around 1990, late 90s, Seascape came in. And that was certainly a big jump at that time. This is still grown commercially. It's a very large berry, good color inside and out, more disease resistant. So this thing still, we notice today, it's more vigorous, more disease resistant than most of the strawberries. Although here, the disease resistance isn't a key thing because we don't usually have as much rain. Like if you're in Florida or some of those other places where it rains a lot, rain can be a big problem. Or up north, rain is a big problem on the strawberries. Here it's kind of minor, but Seascape is still noted for its vigor. So we do carry that during the year. And then the next big one was Albion, which came out in 2006 or 7, a little after the turn of the century. And that's what we sell as bare root. We think it's the best, one of the top strawberries you can eat. So they're large, they're very conical. It's very conically shaped. Whereas, some of these other strawberries, sometimes you get those wedge ones, which commercially they don't like the wedge-shaped ones because they don't pack real well. Whereas if they're all the same exact conical shape, they pack better. And Albion was created in University of California. In fact, all these I think are University of California. And even England commented, one of the universities in England said, this is the best thing to come out of California ever. So a good firm berry. Now, a lot of the farms that ship want Camarosa. And we'll sell those too. Extremely firm. So if you like extremely firm berries, Camarosa, you'll like because they don't soften up that much. They don't get mushy ever. But this one's only rated good tasting, whereas all these are rated excellent. So it's not quite as good as the rest. But, you can probably leave them on your plant for more than a week and they won't get mushy on you. They'll stay firm. I mean, to me, they almost are a bit on the crispy side. So if you get them at the store and they're crispy, that's Camarosa. Now, there's a whole slew of other strawberries, but we can't get them anymore. So it's unfortunate that one of the main strawberry producers, or the main strawberry producer in California, Lassen Canyon, used to sell direct to us. But I guess their sales rep, they told us that we're too small. And, instead of selling us a minimum of 500, their minimum is 10,000 plants at one time, which, we'd need 2 or 3, well, more than that, 3 or 4 or 5 refrigerators to hold that much at one time. So unless we invest in a lot of refrigeration, we can't go to that company anymore. But they had all the new varieties like Monterey, San Andreas, Cabrillo, all the newest ones, but now we don't have access to them. So what we have access to is one of the companies that Lassen Canyon ships to, a retail supplier, or a distributor that they ship to. So now we can only get the ones that they carry, and Albion is probably the best one they carry. They do carry Sequoias, I think Chandlers too, and we'll pick up some of those during the year. And Seascape, sometimes I can get Seascape from them also. But no, we get these from our bedding plant suppliers, and they buy them from the distributor. It's Cope's Plants in California that distributes for Lassen Canyon. And they specialize in selling to the guys who do them in this. And what they do is they cut the roots. So if they're going to one of these companies, this thing won't fit in here. So what they do for them is they cut the roots short so they can put them in the 6-packs. But, it's nicer to get a plant like this, although this is about a month behind, maybe 6 weeks at max behind those, because we can't get these as early as, I don't know, these companies get them earlier than we do. But again, you'll still get production starting up before spring, which is what'll happen is if you have a plant from last year, it won't start production until spring. There's a lot more varieties now. Strawberries are divided into 3 sections. June bearing, which is short day. Day neutral and ever bearing, but the differences are kind of minor. So most strawberries produce really well this time of year all the way until it gets to, so the short day ones, which Chandler definitely is a short, or a June, they call it June bearing. It stops flowering, the Chandler stops flowering in July. Days are getting too long. So it stops flowering in July. So the last fruit you get on Chandler is probably July. And then it won't start making flowers again until the next year. Most of these other ones, this one, are called day neutral. Well, Camarosa is another June bearer, so it stops bearing after July. Now, most farms in Southern California plant the June bearing strawberries. And the reason for that is because all these strawberry varieties make about the same number of berries per year, which is, they claim about a quart per plant per year. But the June bearers do it all winter, spring. And the ever bearers like Sequoia and Seascape and Albion distribute it more throughout the year. So of course the farmers that are wanting their winter and spring crop, they get the June bearers because the berries are more concentrated at that time. Whereas a lot of homeowners would like to have strawberries in the summer too. But even the ones that are ever bearing, quote ever bearing, they slow down when it gets hot. So they don't make as much fruit. The fruit's not quite as good, but they will pick up right again. If summer's cool, they'll just keep making fruit. That's one of the reasons we do the Albion and Sequoia, is because they'll fruit through the summer. So you'll have some fruit then too. And there are other varieties that we get occasionally. See if I can remember the names. There's one called Eversweet, which I can't find any information on it. So I don't know what that one does, but we get that from our bedding plant growers. But I don't know that one. Now and then we get something called Gaviota, University of California. I think it was 1999 or so. And that one is really noted because a lot of these things got so crispy and firm that they created something especially for that area, Gaviota, California, that was a little more tender and sweet. And we have customers who swear by this thing, but we just don't have a supplier for it. Now and then when our customers are bringing some of their runners. So strawberry plants, generally during the summer months, they make a lot of runners, which are the new plants. And all the plants we get in from as bare root, these were runners that were created last summer. So each plant will make runners with new plants on the end of it. And those are what are then sold to the farms during the fall and winter for the new plants. The original plants, again, they get old. So the strawberry plants in general make flowers and berries during winter and spring, and then they make a lot of runners, make new plants in the summer. If you cut those runners off so they don't spend energy on them, you'll get a few more berries that way. So if you don't want to make runners, just keep clipping them off and you'll get more flower and fruit production. There are some varieties that can make a lot of runners. Like the only problem with Albion, they said, is it tends to spend a lot of energy making runners. But if you cut them off, you'll stop that problem. Because that's still considered the best of the quote modern strawberries is Albion. Okay, any questions on the strawberries? So right now we have a lot of Albions, bare roots. We have some 6-packs. Sequoia, I didn't check all the varieties, see what I have out there, but I don't have a whole lot at the moment. But plenty of these. We have to order, the minimum order from this company is 1,500. So we have probably about 1,000 in our refrigerators right now. Now, if you buy bare root, you don't have to refrigerate them. They'll sit for a week without refrigeration. They start growing, so you might as well let them start growing. But if you can store, so the company says they can store them in the fridge until May every year. Now, we don't usually carry bare root strawberries past April's about it. We don't go past then because the plants are getting a little old at that point, and you've already lost most of your production season, which is now through spring is when you get your most berries and your best quality berries when it's not so hot. So strawberries, according to our farmer friend, is their best money-making crop. So they, in fact, my own relatives were strawberry farmers in Orange County in Cypress back in the 1960s, 50s and 60s. And I remember they used to brag to all the family members that if they had a good year back in the 60s, they would clear 40 grand. So each of my relatives' kids bought a house in the 1960s in Orange County because every year they'd clear enough to buy a home back in those days. So they were making good money. None of them do this anymore. I mean, they all quit in the 70s and they do other things now, but it is a lucrative, you get a good year, you make a lot, of course they come across bad years too, but you get a good year, you make a lot of money. So
So when you plant the bare root, you just dig deep enough that you get.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I should have mentioned that. So like on farms, what they do, they've got the berm covered with plastic, and they have this machine that just punches a hole through the plastic and makes a hole in the ground, and they just lower the roots into that little slot in the ground. So when you plant a bare root strawberry, you can kind of tell which way is up. I mean, these are the roots. These are the old leaf stems. There's some new leaves coming out. You want to get the ground level somewhere in this region. I mean, you can bury the leaves a little bit and get away with it. You can leave a little bit of root exposed and get away with it, but it's better to be right about like that when you plant them. And these have already been planted, so you can kind of, it's easier to tell on that. But on some of these strawberry plants, yeah, sometimes if you get one of these, and sometimes if you don't see an obvious leaf, it's still fairly easy to tell that these were dead leaf stems and these are roots. You can pick off the dead parts if you like. Sometimes it helps to grow a little faster. Any other questions? Okay. All right. Thank you.